Good day, all. My name is Dr. Daniyan. I'm presenting a paper titled Inclusion of Children with Special Educational Needs in the Mainstream Classroom. Introduction. The adoption of inclusive education embodies the transformation of schools and other learning centers to serve all learners, including those with and without special educational needs. According to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 26, Section 1, United Nations 1948, it mandates that everyone has a right to basic education. Similarly, the Salamanca Statement Framework for Action, United Nations, UNESCO, 1994 reaffirmed the fundamental right of every person to education and renewed the pledge of the World Conference on Education for All. This is to ensure that the right for all is mandated irrespective of their differences. However, it has proven a challenge to promote inclusive education. Before the adoption of inclusive education in 1994, education provision for children with disability were either in special schools or special classrooms in regular schools. The provision of education to these children was embedded in deterministic perception that ability was fixed. This was because of the then dominant bell curve thinking about ability. This bell curve thinking about ability entails the utilization of developmental norms in the assessment of learners for their identification and grouping according to their cognitive level of functioning. It was revealed that the stigmatization placed on children with disability affect their education. Children with disability were assumed to be incapable of benefiting from regular classroom teaching and learning processes, and their placement in regular classrooms will interfere with the effective pedagogy of their typically developing peers. This assumption further escalated their violation of fundamental human rights to inclusive education, which was enshrined in Article 26 of Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and it promoted the labeling and stigmatization of these learners because they were perceived to be different. Approaches to teaching. Teachers are vital in the implementation of policies, including the policy of inclusive education. It has been acknowledged that teachers are essential instruments that make inclusive educational goals a reality. Their belief, assumption, and attitude inform teaching practices, decisions, and actions. Teachers' beliefs shape their pedagogical practices. Attitude in this context refer to mental construct, indicating how individuals evaluate people, activities, places, or items positively or antagonistically. Attitude comprises cognitive, emotion, and behavioral components, signifying the feelings, actions, and thoughts that person display towards others. Thus, a teacher-tolerant attitude towards all children, including those with disability, has a profound influence on children's learning. This current study explored the inclusion of children with special educational needs in the mainstream classroom in Nigeria. A negative attitude in teachers hamper the reality of inclusive educational goals. Several studies reveal the impact of negative attitude on the holistic development of children, including those with special educational needs. According to Solivita and his colleague, they carried out a survey on Finnish and German teachers, and they revealed that 90% of German teachers agreed that the placement of children with special educational needs in regular classroom created more workload. Similarly, Cambridge Johnson and his colleague carried a qualitative study of high school teachers in Bahamas, and they established that some teachers were against implementing inclusive education because they felt it is very tedious and time-consuming. Other researchers like Mark and his colleague, 2020, established that 14.6% of participants believe that none of learners with special educational needs were capable of studying in regular schools. So Velita observed that if a teacher doesn't want a child in a class, the mere presence of extra resources and knowledge cannot ensure favorable outcome. In Chile, it was established in a focus group interview that participants doubted how inclusive education can benefit children with special educational needs. A mixed method study of regular educational teachers from 3 primary schools in Korea also revealed that 75.85% of teachers believe that learners with disability are better taught in special settings. The teacher claims that special educational learners may be frustrated and not succeed in regular classroom. Similarly, it was argued that teachers who perceive disability as pathologic will rarely attend to the needs of those learners with disabilities. They will be thinking it's the duty of specialist teachers. It was found in India that teachers with negative attitude towards children with disability tend to use unproductive pedagogical strategies. However, a growing body of study identified the impact of positive attitude towards inclusive education. It was established that when children with special educational needs are put in mainstream classes, positive attitudes of teachers are critical for success. Teacher positive attitude enhances learner academic performance. A survey of 221 primary school teachers in Sweden revealed that teachers had a positive attitude towards the inclusion of children with physical disability in their physical education lesson. And this teacher rejected the claim that designing inclusive education for students with disability is stressful and that teachers do not have enough opportunities for other students in the class. Approaches to teaching in the Nigerian educational context. Consistent with the international fraternity, Nigeria ratified several international human rights instruments and passed national policy and legislation that enshrine the right of all children to quality, equality, access, achievement, and participation in education. However, most children experience educational exclusion because legal requirements are not always complied with, thus eliminating the chances of these children to realize their academic dreams. Among those children vulnerable to educational exclusion in Nigeria were girls, children living in poverty, nomad, pastoral, and farmers' children, as well as children with disability and the Almajiri's children. Almajiri's children are children who aid or assist blind beggars or women beggars in soliciting for alms. Reports show that the Almajiri children constitute large number of children not attending school in Nigeria. Similarly to several international studies, the attitude of teachers in Nigeria can either promote or inhibit inclusive education. According to Sambo and Gambo, 2015, they posit that the negative attitude of teachers may be seen in their choice of poor instructional method, not providing support to learners and calling them slow learners. It was argued that if teachers have a negative attitude towards children with special educational needs, it is doubtful that they will provide appropriate inclusive services for these children. Akinfe and colleagues 2012 carried out a quantitative study on 200 students randomly selected from senior secondary schools in Ondo State, Nigeria. And they found that most of the students, 75%, indicated that their teachers' attitude did not encourage them to choose teaching profession as a career in the future. Similarly, a descriptive study of 342 teachers from Edo State public secondary school revealed that most of the teachers had negative attitude towards students with special need. However, Ajun 2012, in its qualitative study of 141 special school teachers, found that majority of these teachers had tolerant attitude towards diverse behavior. In another study, Shukuka 2012 examined 120 teachers from regular schools in Southwest Nigeria and established that teachers were positive towards the implementation of inclusive education. Similarly, a report of a survey carried out on 200 special and regular school teachers from Southwest Nigeria found that majority of the teachers had positive attitude towards learners with special needs, although 71.5% of these teachers lacked the knowledge of special education, but still they were still positive towards teaching these learners. The theoretical framework that underpinned the present study. This study was informed by cultural historical activities theory charts. Cultural historical activities theory chart is also known as activities theory. It is an interdisciplinary philosophical framework that examines both the personal and social facet of human behavior. Human activities is viewed from the stance of activities theory as the fundamental analytical unit when examining human behavior. Understanding individual and communal dimension of human practices from a cultural and historical viewpoint is the most crucial component of activities theory. There are several principles of chart. This study employs the principle of multi-voiceness, which states that people carry different histories and views. According to Frambach 2014, multi-voiceness of activities is a collective interaction of individuals and communities which share different views and interests. This principle aims to elucidate and gain insight into the inclusion of children with special educational needs in the mainstream classroom in Nigeria. The study took into consideration the social cultural context of the phenomena under study, and the researchers spent time at each research contest to carry out individual interview, non-participant observation, and document analysis of the participants. The method used to select participants. Criterion sampling method was used to select 16 primary school teachers for the study. The criteria for participant selection were teachers with a bachelor degree obtained from institutions that offer inclusive education module or related modules across teacher education programs. The sample was limited to teachers in the mainstream in the Ikorodu local educational district, which have at least one learner with special needs in their classrooms. The participants have a minimum of 1 year working experience after the completion of their teaching qualification, and they all agree and sign the informed consent form to participate in the study. Finally, participant gender, sex, and age was not considered as selection criteria. Data collection. A qualitative multiple case study design was used in this study to yield strength to precision, stability, and validity of the study findings. Data were collected through individual interview, non-participant observation, and document analysis. A semi-structured interview was used to obtain first-hand information from 16 primary school teachers about their inclusion of children with barrier to learning in mainstream classroom in Nigeria. Data analysis. A thematic analysis method was used. According to Marian 209, Data analysis in a multiple case study design occurs in 2 stages. The first stage involved within case analysis, and the second stage is a cross-case analysis. Initially, interview transcript, observation checklist, describable note from the observation, and as well as note jotted from the document obtained from individual participants were analyzed. Thereafter, data analysis of the 4 participants within a single case were compared and contrasted. After analyzing the 4 single cases separately, a cross-case analysis was performed. The result and discussion. It emerged from this study that personal disposition, attitude, and belief influence the inclusion of children with special educational needs in the mainstream classroom in Nigeria. Participants reported a caring ethics, lack of training, overcrowded classrooms, and time constraint that influence their implementation of inclusive education. A caring ethics occur when participants reported that in practicing inclusive education, they establish and nurture positive social relationship with their learners in order to be acquainted with them and vice versa, as a springboard for fostering in them the readiness to learn. This was felt to be embedded in the use of interactive teaching and learning strategies. Participants indicated that their caring ethics made learners feel free to express themselves, to relax and be jovial, which was perceived to enhance their teaching and learning. Document analysis similarly earmarked the use of interactive approach to facilitate learner engagement during teaching and learning. Classroom observation. During classroom observation, it was observed that teachers were using interactive teaching and learning strategies, which include discussion, competition, puzzles that promote the active involvement and participation of learners. In a particular classroom that was observed, the researcher found that about 1/4 of the learners were participating in a class discussion during cultural heritage lesson in their cultural and creative arts classroom. The participants focused on learners who were seated close to the front rows, and the participants really engaged learners at the middle and at the extreme back row of the class. Nevertheless, the participant observed that one of the assistant teachers were assisting to maintain peace and order and to ensure that some of the learners participate in the classroom teaching and learning. However, those sitting at the extreme left end of the class and those sitting at the middle of the class were not participating. The researcher even observed that some learners were dozing and sleeping off during classroom discussion. After the observation, the researcher engaged the participants in discussion, and they later told the researcher that large number of learners and the lack of space in the classroom hindered them from paying individual attention to those learners, that it was difficult for them to move around in the class because of the space, because of the limited space. Lack of training to manage learner diversity. It was revealed during the research that lack of training hindered participants to manage diversity in the classroom. The participant reported that it was not easy for them to manage learners with disability in regular classroom. This participant felt that learners with disability could not cope in regular classroom, and they also could not cope with these learners as they perceived that they were not trained to teach these learners. They believed that learners with disability should be placed in special school where teachers are trained to cater for their needs. Participants raise dissatisfaction about the training they received during their initial teacher preparation.